Welcome back to Jersey Matters. We continue our coverage now of the vaping crisis with Assemblyman Herb Conaway, who is also a physician and always generous with his time. He's Assemblyman for the 7th Legislative District. Thank you so much for being here. We have this crisis where now 6 people have died, and they can't figure out what this mysterious lung disease is. What would you suggest we do right now?
Well, to follow the CDC recommendation, which is that young adults, teenagers should not use these products until such time as the government and scientists figure out what's causing these terrible tragedies where people are dying or having serious complications with their lungs.
I know you've been reading the CDC site and their reports on this. What do we know so far about it?
Well, we know that the cause of the problem is not related to a bacteria or a virus, that it's an inflammatory condition set up in the lung by the use of these products. And it's thought right now that perhaps oil getting into the lungs is the cause of these inflammatory reactions that are stealing people's breath.
Yeah, we learned in the last segment when I talked to the poison control people, it's only happened for the last couple of months, so you would think that forensically you could go back and figure out where this started and why.
A lot of people don't like to talk about, using knockoffs, perhaps using marijuana-containing products in a product that was designed just for nicotine. And so sometimes to get at this epidemiologic data from the person who is suffering a problem, it can be difficult, particularly when they're minors.
So you think people are mixing their own oils at this point?
Well, or buying mixed oils, buying oils that are added to these cartridges that were not put there by the original manufacturer.
So now I talked to the physician a second ago. Let me talk to the Assemblyman, because there's two pieces of legislation on board to be debated in Trenton. Let's start with the first one, the ban of all flavored vaping products. Are you for that?
I am for that. I've sponsored legislation to do precisely that. And the reason I have done so is that all the experts have said that this use of flavors is targeted at hooking a young generation on nicotine. They're used primarily by teenagers and young adults. It's designed to attract them to use these nicotine products, and it will, for far too many, lead to lifelong addiction to nicotine.
So you're all for that. You'd love to see that banned. You'd sponsored the bill. Steve Sweeney saw that bill, the Senate president, and said, you know what, that's a great idea. He applauded the bill, but said, why don't we go further? Why don't we just ban all vaping?
Well, I think bans are something that's going to have to be looked at with some caution. We've seen bans on alcohol and other things which have led to problems with criminality. It would certainly reduce the likelihood that a young person is going to run afoul of these devices. And so it's something that deserves serious consideration.
We were told in the last segment from the woman from Poison Control that there is some benefit to vaping, that somebody that's trying to get off a nicotine habit, to stop smoking, at least it's a healthier way to ingest the nicotine, and it does serve as a way of reducing the usage. Do you buy that?
Well, the problem is the FDA hasn't shown that. None of these products have gone before the FDA as they should have, as Congress has mandated, quite frankly, in the last administration. Obama administration delivered the ability of the FDA to look at these products, and these products are supposed to come in, find out what's in them, and if they want to market themselves as a smoking cessation device, then they need to prove that in fact they're going to help people reduce their addiction to nicotine. None of them have done that so far. And so while it may help people reduce their addiction to nicotine over time, the evidence right now shows that people who start vaping end up using both vaping devices and combustible cigarettes as well. So we don't have good evidence that shows that these devices help with smoking cessation. Now, they deliver less tar, nicotine, and other cancer-causing agents to the lung. So if I had a person who was smoking for 20 years and a person who used a vaping device for 20 years with the same amount of nicotine, that person who used a vaping device is going to have less tar and nicotine, and they will have a relatively less risk of cancer in their lung. But what I want to see is a world where people aren't addicted to nicotine, so they're not getting any of these cancer-causing chemicals in their lung. Big problem is we don't know what's in those devices. We don't know the effects of flavoring what it will.
Well, flavoring's another issue.
Flavoring's
another issue.
We don't know.
This is cleaner, isn't it?
It is
you
cleaner,
said that.
but we don't know the impacts of it, and we don't know what's in it. And what I'm afraid of is it'll end up like smoking cigarettes. It went on decades before people figured out what was going on, and it was causing cancer. We could be seeing another situation with these vaping products, unknown what's in them, and find out decades later that they cause just as serious health effects as smoking a cigarette does. Lighting it up with a flame. So I urge caution. Let's get these things studied. If they're helpful on smoking cessation, I'm all for it. But if they're not, and if they're causing cancer in high rates, then people need to be warned of that risk, and they need to be advised not to smoke. Whether it's you're lighting it up with a match, or whether you're heating it up with electricity in a coil.
So you're going to have hearings about this and call in experts. But will you be skeptical since there is no FDA research on this?
Well, what I am skeptical is, where I'm cautious is, that to give people the best information they have before they make decisions about their health. We don't have that from the FDA, and I would advise people not to use these devices, particularly young adults, teenagers, and pregnant women. The CDC says do not use them. If you must use them, then please do not buy something off the street where you don't know who made it, because that could result in very serious illness.
We have a little bit of time left, so I want to switch to another topic, because the last time you were here, we were talking about legalizing recreational marijuana. And it was interesting, you really had a dilemma with it. You knew there was a social benefit to do it, especially when it comes to people that are put in jail and have been sitting in jail. But then you had the other side, your physician side, had a problem with it, and you were torn. It never came up for a vote. Where were you leaning?
Well, I was leaning on listening to my constituents and finding out what they thought about it. Look, I appreciate what many people have said, that far too many young people, particularly people of color, who have ended up in jail, who've lost their ability to go to college, lost their ability to get a decent job because of these convictions. And in my view, that needs to end. And that's a significant factor that I'm considering in deciding what to do about this. I think our next step is going to be to place this question before the people and let the people decide where they want New Jersey to go, to a New Jersey at least that sees recreational, the benefits of recreational use, or a world that says, you know what, we're going to continue on as we are, and perhaps let's think now about decriminalization or some of these other things.
But the thought was it was put up for a referendum because they didn't have the votes. Mm-hmm. Were you one of the votes they didn't have?
I was an undecided vote.
Okay.
I was an undecided vote, for sure. And I think many people were in that place, and they want to hear, I think, from their constituents. The governor's made his case. I think the leadership has also made a case. And we'll see when the votes are counted. Remember, no vote's been taken. And the rubber meets the road when you have to push that button, red or green.
Thank you, sir.
Glad to be here.
As I said, you're always gracious with your time. Thank you very much. Herb Conaway, physician and assemblyman for the 7th Legislative District. Jersey Matters continues right after this. Still to come on Jersey Matters, 3 fathers who lost their sons to the opioid crisis try to save others. We'll explain when Jersey Matters comes right back.